So I'm calling it this time, commodities are going to crash the entire planetary monetary system. September it begins, December it ends. It's really going to happen that fast because the first deliveries come up in September. The amount of paper contracts out there is limitless pretty much. But people have realized that, you know what, like me, there won't be the corn. So what if I get the corn? I could probably get it in my physical hand and then on sell it to somebody for a 20 or 30% gain easily, just even in a day or two of transaction. Go, oh, I got 50 barges of corn. Who wants it? Nobody else can get it. So a lot of people are onto this and they understand it. And with China bidding in higher than the world price right now, that if you're able to even get that corn, anywhere in the world will pay you unbelievable amounts for that because there's food shortages happening now. And welcome back for the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. David Dubine here along with Ransom Godwin, Revolution Radio, Studio A. Thanks for letting us chat. If we were looking for signs that we are coming into the end of what we know as the present Homo sapiens sapien, well, what is the deal with this? They're already planning for it. And I say, what else is being planned for? Oh, the Bank of England. You know, these nefarious characters here putting into play their bank bail-in protocol. Yeah, that was passed after 2008 that the bail-ins would be the bailout for the bank. Because see, 2008, the law was changed after this subprime financial crisis. And we're repeating a lot of chapters here. Like this subprime financial crisis, everybody got in on early mortgages and hardly had to put like $1 down, but your mortgage would go up and down with the interest rate of the gov. But it was so stable for a while that people were like, okay, it'll stay at like 3%, 4%. It won't move up from there. But it did greatly in 2007. In 2008, it got so unaffordable because people's mortgages rose so quickly that they just dropped the keys on the table and walked away en masse. And it took bank after bank after bank down. So then all these banks were getting nearly to the collapse of the financial system. They had to put in a bunch of paper fake money back at that time too. And, you know, they were quibbling about like not even $1 trillion at that time to save the system. And the request was for 700 and something billion in a single night. And they were freaked out. It wasn't even $1 trillion they were asking for. And it was still like so orders of magnitude above anything ever asked for that it shocked everybody. But now 780 or something billion on a single transaction helps save the monetary system. You're like, oh, we can do that every night now. You know, and just the way they frame it now, it's trillions, 34 trillion. You know, those bank bail-ins, the same thing like these scoundrels did that are in the Federal Reserve, the Board of Governors in the Federal Reserve. They passed a law at the very top of the market that they were no longer allowed to own any equities or bonds or anything in the financial markets, and they forced themselves to sell. Just before the very top of the market, they passed that. 2 months later was the very top of the market as we know it today, and they all had to sell forced at the point of a, you know, mandate or something, or they're going to lose their position. You need to sell everything. They forced sold themselves at the high of the market. These are the people you're dealing with that also passed those same bailout bills back in 2008 and 9. Financial crisis was going to collapse. Seriously, was going to collapse, or so they say. They needed the almost $1 trillion. Because of that, so many banks failed. Freddie Mae, Fannie Mac, anything real estate. Well, this time it's going to be anything commodities. I am making a bold call here, and please, Ransom, write this down or else I'm going to forget it in my state of mind right now. The next, just like it was the you know, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac that got taken down in the real estate collapse in 2008. The commodities houses and the commodities brokers and the trading houses are going to get taken out this time because there's not going to be enough corn to deliver on contract. There's more people with contracts now pledging to take delivery out of Chicago in September, which is just literally a few months away, than there is the amount of corn in the United States to fill the contracts. At this time, we're months away from anywhere. And now they're basing it on what they're getting for crop forecast now. But now it's getting worse and worse and worse. There's droughts and like lowering yields everywhere across the board. Like everything that was planned at the beginning of the year for yields is down at least 20%. And then you got the fertilizer shortages too on top of that. I'm just talking about natural effects. So the way the cascade of the demolishing of the financial system is going to be based on the product base itself. Because if you don't have the corn, you can't manufacture almost any product that we have. From the fuels that need the ethanol to most of the things in the supermarkets that need some sort of corn product in them. And then we got the animal feed, and corn is in every finger. Like you said, it's technologically right now in this transition, there's a finger in every bit of technology that there could possibly be applied to society right now. Well, same thing with corn. It's in everywhere. It's really a place you cannot find a corn byproduct. The same thing with diesel and different emulsifiers and these different things that go into diesel fuels. They got 5-6 extra chemicals that need to go in there, along with the DEF, that's that diesel exhaust that's mandated by the EPA to reduce pollution. Like that's an extra thing that's just not there. So I'm calling it this time, commodities are going to crash the entire planetary monetary system. September it begins, December it ends. It's really going to happen that fast because the first deliveries come up in September. The amount of paper contracts out there is limitless pretty much. But people have realized that, you know what, like me, there won't be the corn. So what if I get the corn? I could probably get it in my physical hand and then on-sell it to somebody for a 20 or 30% gain easily, just even in a day or two of transaction. Go, oh, I got 50 barges of corn. Who wants it? Nobody else can get it. And you charge extra. So a lot of people are onto this and they understand it. And with China bidding in higher than the world price right now, that if you're able to even get that corn, anywhere in the world will pay you unbelievable amounts for that because there's food shortages happening now. I'll say Ecuador is the next place already fell. You know, everywhere you look, Egypt, Middle East, smaller nations, Sri Lanka, they're going to fall first. They're going to pay anything for that corn if you can get it. So the bidding war is going to go on here. And I was talking to a guy up at the CME, or I should say the Chicago Board of Trade. Every day that they can't close the contract, and this is a clearinghouse, that's usually an arm of a bank. Every day they cannot close the contract, they are fined. So the way that it's being worked out at the banks as we currently sit here right now is, how much are they going to need to pay to close that contract? And they're working with these cost analyses. So let's say they have, I'm going to use simple math here, a contract to deliver 1,000 tons. But they only can get from their grower, who is also on contract, 800 tons. If that farm can't deliver its contract, it gets fined every day also, the farm itself. So they're looking for a massive amount of bankruptcies to roll through the farming industry because these guys are getting wiped out on their yields, not only for the fertilizer, but also the drought that we're seeing and the inclement weather for planting all over the northern tier states of the U.S. on the border with Canada, specifically the Dakotas. Like it's physically not going to be there. So whoever has the most money to buy it to cover and then get the extra to close their contract. So you're looking on the market for 200 extra tons because your contract's for 1,000. You got to deliver, getting fined every day. I can deliver 800 tons of it. Okay, so I'm out on the market trying to scrap together 200 tons. And this is where lies in the problem, is the banks are going to bid to any price it takes to get that corn. Now, soybeans, as I was talking with my contact there, was saying, David, you're not going to believe this. They're talking like $50 soybean. That's never been that. It's not even conceivable to go that high, ever. Even where we're at the record high ranges now, to say 50, you'd be laughed out of a room. I was nearly laughed out of a room for calling $20 wheat last year. Came up to $14 and I got a couple phone calls. Like, how did you know it was going to go up so this year? That's crazy. Maybe it's not a record yet, but when it comes into harvest season, it's sure going to be a record. It's going to be $20 wheat for sure coming into the harvest season. And the banks are going to need to cover that too, because of their clearinghouses that have open contracts for wheat and corn. And what else do they have out there? The soybean, the millet. There's some small sorghum markets. There's a few oat markets that are out But every day they can't close the contract, they're getting fined. So they're going to collude together to buy every single square inch of corn and get it in so they can close the contract. And he's like, they're just going to bid it as high as it can possibly go past the moon or stratospheric way. Forget that. You're going to the moon and back because they just don't care. Because the losses are going to exceed and they're going to crash the balance sheet and crash the parent bank off of this. Because they don't own just one contract. They own thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of contracts through these banks for delivering everything out. It's starting to show the illusion of the crack because the silver market's the exact same way. There's like 1,000, maybe even more paper ounces out there than the physical. Well, that's the same thing. Let's say you have 100 of those are coming and saying, well, I want my physical. Before it was only like 1 or 2. It's the highest recorded ever amount of people wanting physical delivery. So the way this is going to rock the market and the way your food prices are going to rise so fast, you're just not going to know what happened. Because when the banks start bidding it up, and I'm going to use the example, you're going from like $18 soybean to $50 soybean. That's more than doubling. It's almost tripling. What do you think is going to happen to the animal feed prices? And like the cooking oil prices and anything that use soy or soy product in a product, byproduct. How many things have soy meal in it, or soy flour, soy milk, soy everything? Your price in the store is not going to go up 3x. It's going to go up about maybe 6 or 7x. So whatever the farmers are reflecting on that, you can then double that out to your store purchase price and probably higher. Because out here in East Tennessee, a dozen eggs at wholesale is like $1.50 now. It did creep up to around $1.70. But you think about what you're paying for a dozen eggs out in the store now, you're easily at $4. And the beef right now about $1.60 live weight per pound. Then you look in the store and you go, no way, you're not anywhere close to $1.60 on a piece of meat anywhere. And lamb, it's what's it, $2.30 a pound. Last year it was $2 a pound live weight. But I can't tell you anywhere in the world where you can get a lamb cut for like $2. You got to buy a live weight animal. You got to do the process. You got to figure it out. Dress that thing out into steaks and meats that you can use. So I don't know, Ransom, I lost my thought there. But something nefarious this way comes.
You made me hungry talking about all those steaks and stuff. All of what you said is obviously happening, and people sometimes don't understand the how things are relevant. Like you were talking about when all of these grains go up in price, that you're going to have all of these other products, everything breaded, all the animal feed, everything that takes these grains, the oils. But not just that. Think about they're hiking the price of petroleum products up. What does that mean to you? Well, most people think about the gas pump being high and they're paying a lot for gas, but everything made out of petroleum increases. And for an example, I used to do vinyl siding right around the time that we were doing a lot of war. And I saw when the price of gas went up, guess what also went up? All of our building supplies that we normally made our percentage off of the low cost of the materials and getting paid a pretty good amount for labor, that all disappeared. So our profit disappeared almost overnight with the increase of gasoline or petroleum products, because everything made out of petroleum products, that includes all your plastics, everything that's made out of plastic, that pretty much is 90% of the product that you're going to be getting from the store. Any kind of trinkets, any kind of tools, any kind of clothing, etc. There's so much plastic tied to that. And also the food industry. Just imagine how much plastic that they put on everything, and all of that is also going to increasing the overall price of each one of those products. Food products especially is where you're going to start seeing it. I saw tinfoil $15 for one little thing, and I was thinking, wow, man, I'm glad I don't even use that. Then it makes me think of, part of what you were talking about is cycles when you're saying that. And so right now we have a unique planetary alignment that's happening. And let's push ourselves over into the astrology cycle for just a second. I'm not an astrologer. However, I did recognize that astrology is one of the first sciences, and there's a lot of patterns and things that you could tell about reality. But not only that, more importantly, we know that the elite and a lot of the people in these secret schools and societies and different things all are super about the astrology when things line up. And right now, and this month, we have Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn all lining up early in the morning. One thing I'm saying is imagine how the ancient people felt when they looked up and saw all of their visible gods in the sky at one time. But let's fast forward to a more recent cycle. So the last time that these 5 planets simultaneously were in the sky was in 1864. What was happening in 1864, and what kind of
Yeah,
cycle
the
do you think
beginning
we're
of the
in now?
Civil War.
That's right. The whole year was civil war, 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 war. Now, right now, if you've been paying attention to the fictional stories that they're saying, they're trying to tell us right now that that's what's going on. That we're, at the fringe of a civil war. They've been trying really hard to push it. Why, though? Well, I think this is part of the answer right here is historical events. It just shows you what was happening in 1864 last time the planets aligned like this. And what happened was is a bunch of war, the exchange of monies and goods and resources, and the realigning of partnerships, business deals, stock markets. What they had then, and you can just look through the entire year. This is war, and this is what they tried to have planned for us now, which is funny because this same cycle is going to pop back around in 20 years. So this was a longer cycle, but the same planetary cycle is going to pop back up in 20 years in 2040. And what do you think we're going to look like by 2040? And it just kind of puts in perspective that these elites pay attention to the alignments. And we were talking about the Bethlehem star a few years ago, very significant. Blood moons in the last couple years for several religions is very significant. There's been all kinds of these astronomical alignments that haven't happened in exactly the same procession, I guess, or in a row in the same order as they are happening in the last several years. And then I have to point out that we are waiting for this solstice and alignment in 2024, where these giants are going to be creating a geometric pattern along with the solar system. So God knows what that means exactly for the planet Earth. But think about the esoteric side of it and the elite's beliefs and what happens at these times. And you can see that these people are just rolling down a plan that was given to them by somebody at some time. I think a long time ago. And, I'm starting really to theorize that whatever technological civilization we had before was at least to the level, not like a extraterrestrial that we think about that needs all this energy to travel the universe to get from one place to another, but they came from local and might even have been some kind of other hominid, maybe not even an alien at all. But either way, when they talk about what they were doing, genetic, rocket fueled technology, they talk about that. So all of these are examples of our civilization right now. So they weren't that very far advanced. So they should have been at the point where they had created some kind of AI. And then civilization, as we knew it, collapsed there, or as they knew it, excuse me, and it took us thousands of years to recuperate. However, if you just had one piece of technology from that era of some kind of artificial intelligence, all you would be waiting for is for civilization to get back in the space it needs to build technological things. So it's true whether or not it was an ancient hominid that could have possibly done this. And think about it. They could have literally just used an old AI from something else. And that's where these plans come from. They didn't know how to technologically send it to the future. So what they did is they opened up secret schools of learning, secret libraries and things like that. And that's the only way that I can see possible that people like the Mayan, the Olmec, and various other cultures around the world had a 52,000-year history of celestial events. Which brings me back to this point. We're now in a pretty impressive event. If you get up early in the morning and look to, I believe it's the east, you'll see the moon and all of these planets all in a line. What was happening the last go round when all of these people were in power, these families, these elites, these entities like banking institutions that are ran by all of these secret societies, elites, and the occult, they love that stuff. So what was happening last time? Civil war. What are they trying to give us now? Civil war, world war. It's like all of these cycles are all coming into alignment. If you can just picture hundreds of different circles on their own path, their own cycle, kind of picture the Mayan or Olmec calendar and how it's a bunch of gears within gears within gears, and it turns, and there's all of these interconnected little cycles along with big cycles. And then weirdly, I don't know why, it just always made me think of this. Think about the book of Ezekiel in the Bible and how they describe the UFO or God or whatever you want to call it. It was gears and gears and wheels with faces. And, it was all of the signs of the time now, which is chimeras, technology, artificial intelligence. The idea is getting closer and closer. And by the way, on July 5th, the Large CERN Hadron Collider is going to collide particles at a speed they never have done before in an attempt to find particles from another dimension.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's going to be an interesting day, isn't it? And then look to see astrologically what's happening, because here I got another factoid from you while you were talking. I looked up something here because I remember hearing a glimmer of this in like a couple weeks ago, about 1,000 years ago. And so the last time that the sort of similar alignment was 20 years ago. But here's the interesting thing, like in the zodiac, you have the 12 quadrants of the sky. Now this precision of the planets being spaced far enough out so the larger planets aren't overtaking the smaller ones, you can actually see a space between all of them so you can see the line of them. In the same exact quadrant of the sky was 949 AD. So it's not the alignment itself. It transited through the different zodiac signs, and then it's back where it was exactly in the same quadrant of the sky, exactly as it was 1,000 years ago almost. So the next time it'll do it in this exact same spot, the way we see it in the quadrant of the sky it is, and how spaced perfectly they are so you can see every one of those. The only time that exact parameter will ever come back again is the year 2492. I am saying something very similar is happening like October 23rd, 2024. The four gas giants are lining up into a square in the outer solar system. And if you do spin it around just right, it looks like the Kabbalah of the mysticism. Those four gas giants make the square, come straight down, and Earth and Mars are aligned and into the sun. And then Mercury and Venus are behind that, pretty much in line. So if you're looking at things celestial, and I've heard this also, a glimmer of this before, that the elites are waiting for this specific alignment. They are waiting for an alignment. I'm saying that's the same alignment in October of 2024 that they are waiting for. It's a pretty long wait to have the same exact lineup of the planets in the sky. That's real interesting that it's a 1,000-year event, and then they're firing up the collider here on the 5th. And what's going on then should be a question too. Full moon, new moon, I don't know, what kind of moon could it be?
Since I've been reading into the electric universe and talking to different people and kind of viewing the universe, it kind of confirmed the way I viewed it already, but it just kind of connected it better. So I have this idea of this date is this, winter solstice 2024. The planets are aligned like this. What would happen if the sun produced a coronal mass ejection and it was pushed out towards Earth and then into these four gas giants that have these magnetic fields? What happens with all that energy? Does it bounce back to the Earth again for a second hit? And what would that look like as far as the cosmic rays hitting the Earth from two different directions? It makes me think of these things. What kind of weird magnetic phenomenon is going to happen? And that was just a what if, but what if we had a coronal mass ejection? Think about the energy, or even without it, the sun's energy that it's already pushing off, bouncing back from those magnetic fields would be all Earth facing, directed back at us. So there would be an increase necessarily, I would think. I mean, I'm not an astrophysicist, but I would think that just picturing it in my head in layman's terms of this energy bouncing off of magnetic fields coming back, it would be coming back at the Earth at that time. So with or without, it seems like a very unusual set of circumstances that might create a phenomenon, that's something that would go down in the ages. My brain thinks that way. I got the Olmec calendar gears just floating in there, showing all these little cycles, big cycles. Now they ended that at 2024. And the reason for that is unknown. but it is connected with a Mayan god of destruction and war. That was a tablet that nobody actually saw till recently, because the priest that put it into the temple at the very top of the pyramid put it in backwards so no one would see it. So it's a really strange inscription. And knowing that they knew 52,000 years of history, at least celestial history, kind of makes you wonder, why did they stop it, for one? And two, what is the new cycle that they were thinking of? Basically, I named tonight's thing because of these planets. What are the signs of the times, and how do we read them? And I'm sure you got something to say about that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that Mayan image that you're talking about, because your answer is an actual physics answer. It's called the Bloch wall, or some people call it the Bloch wall. That's where two magnetic fields are looping in on themselves, and they reach that 0 point between, where there's no magnetism between either wall, because there's that little bit of repelling amongst each wall and that perfect center line. Like Bose noise-canceling headsets, but using magnetic fields to do the exact same thing. They cancel each other as they're looping on top of a toroid of each other. That meeting point where they interloop is where our Earth is going to pass through, interestingly. Because the four gas giants themselves are going to create their own slight new magnetic field. It's going to be a toroid magnetic field, interlooping with our suns, but the sun's going to continue to step down in its activity, at that point going into solar minimum and a grand solar minimum, and possible step down into multi-thousand year cooling. At the same time, those four gas giants are going to have close enough proximity to be able to create their magnetic field balanced off of themselves, hence that Bloch wall. But what will happen with the sun? Will it create some sort of extra ejecta, or maybe even a full line of plasma reaching the outer planets? That would be a rod from God. That would be planetary lightning. That's not the biggest thing to worry. It is a big thing to worry about, but as we swing around, and here's the scary thing, as we swing around in front of the sun in 2025, say March and April, there's nothing in front of us at all in the entire solar system. Everything's behind us. All the gas giants are pulling like an arrowhead. Those four gas giants are making that perfect square of magnetism, pulling everything right in on the tip. And the tip is the Earth coming back through that field. And the sun's going to be at lower activity, which means more debris can actually get through the bow shock, and then more debris can actually get into our atmosphere because our magnetic field's weaker and more little grains of dust, and anything that should burn up in the upper atmosphere doesn't. And we're going to be in a planetary rock field moving through this as the Earth by itself, in front of the sun behind us. If I'm just standing facing open space in front of me, directly behind me is going to be the sun and Mars and Venus and Mercury. And then we get into the outer gas giants. They're all in a perfect square, sucking whatever that's going to come in magnetically out of that open solar system, pure space in front of us. It's like riding the wave of on being on an open ocean sailboat and just sitting there and looking at nothing in front of you except open space out to the bow shock and further beyond. And everything's behind you like aircraft carriers, and you're looking like, whoa, what kind of wake are they creating? You got four aircraft carriers making a square. What kind of wake are they going to make? And you're out there on the bow of the sailboat looking, you can see this massive amount of stuff behind you. So there's going to be a huge planetary bombardment coming for at least 3 to 6 months. And once we swing back around the back of the sun, then things start to loosen a little bit on that second magnetic field. But I think that's what the elites are waiting for. But I'm telling you, Ransom, and the Bloch wall is what I'm looking forward to, because we're going to get canceled in the middle. They've done computer renditions on what it might look like. But it's so hard to explain even in English words that you're surrounded on two sides by glowing plasmas, but in a weightless, timeless space between the magnetic field walls. No viscosity, no flash point, no specific gravity. No pour points, no intervals, nothing. It just exists in a time-space bubble itself, loop. Now, I'm wondering what's going to happen with the regular physics are going to go out the window for a minute. But what's going to happen with the mind during this time?